I never imagined that one day the walls of the house I built with my husband's sweat and my sacrifices would echo with words that shattered me more than any storm ever could. "Pack your things, Margaret. This is no longer your home," my daughter-in-law Claire said coldly, her arms crossed, her voice sharp enough to slice through my heart. I froze in the living room, clutching the framed photograph of my late husband, Robert. His kind eyes stared back at me, as if begging me to stay strong. My hands trembled. "This is my house," I whispered, my voice quivering. "Robert and I bought this place 35 years ago. Every brick carries our memories." Claire's lips curved into a cruel smirk. "Not anymore. Ethan and I live here now. Times change, Margaret. Old people like you, well, you belong somewhere else. A nursing home, maybe." Her words stabbed me deeper than I thought possible. My son, Ethan, stood just behind her, my only child. The boy I carried in my arms through fevers, the boy I stayed up all night for during exams, the boy I raised after Robert's death. He stood there, his head bowed, avoiding my eyes. "Ethan," I said desperately, my voice breaking, "say something. This is your mother's home, our home." He shifted uncomfortably, running his hand through his hair. "Mom, please, don't make this harder than it already is harder." "For whom? For me, the woman being exiled from her own life, or for him, who didn't even have the courage to defend his own mother?" Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I straightened my back and clutched Robert's photo tighter. "Claire," I said firmly, though my voice shook, "you cannot erase me from my own house. I built this life, I built this family," but she only laughed, that cruel laugh that made my skin crawl. "You built nothing, Margaret. Ethan and I are the future. You're just the past." Her words hung in the air like poison. That night, I sat alone in my room, the one Robert and I had painted together in soft blue decades ago. I looked around at the familiar furniture, the old curtains, the quilt I had stitched with my own hands. Each object whispered memories of love, sacrifice, and belonging. And yet, in the same space, I now felt like a stranger. I heard muffled voices from the living room. Claire's sharp tone carried through the walls. "She has to leave, Ethan. I can't stand living with her anymore. She's always around, always watching. I need space. WE needs space." Ethan sighed. "She's my mom." "Exactly," Claire snapped. "Your mom, not our responsibility. Don't you want a life of your own? Don't you want freedom? Or do you want to be chained to her forever?" My chest tightened as though invisible hands were squeezing the air out of me. Was I a burden after everything? I pressed my palm over my mouth to stop the sobs from escaping. My son, my flesh and blood, was letting this woman, his wife, decide my fate. The next morning I gathered courage. Over breakfast I tried to speak calmly. "Ethan, Claire, I've been thinking. Maybe I can stay at the house part-time and also visit Lucy." "No," Claire interrupted, slamming her coffee cup on the table. Her voice rang like a hammer. "You don't get it, Margaret. This isn't a negotiation. We've already decided. You're leaving this weekend, My voice cracked. "So soon? Where will I even go?" "That's not our problem," Claire said coldly. "You'll figure something out." I turned to Ethan, my last hope. "Ethan, please. Son, you know this house. You grew up here. Every corner has your childhood in it. You can't do this to me." He looked at me for a moment, and for just a second I thought I saw the boy I once knew, but then he looked away, his jaw tightening. "I'm sorry, Mom." "Claire's right. We need our own life now. You'll be fine." My whole body went cold. Fine. How could I be fine, ripped away from the very foundation of my life? I left the table silently, retreating to my room before my tears betrayed me. By evening, I sat on my bed with Robert's photo in my lap. "Robert," I whispered through tears, "they want to throw me out of our home. Can you believe it? Our own son, letting her do this to me." The house felt emptier than ever. The laughter of years past seemed to mock me now. Every corner reminded me of sacrifices I made, working late shifts, saving pennies, denying myself luxuries, just so Ethan could have the best. And this was my reward. But as the tears streamed down my face, a thought stirred deep inside me. A thought I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. Claire thought she was winning. She thought she was driving me out. But she didn't know everything. There was something about this house, something about me that she had no idea about. And I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. The next morning, Claire stormed into my room without knocking. "Margaret, don't forget, you're leaving tomorrow. I want this room cleaned out. I don't want to see any of your junk lying around." I lifted my eyes slowly, hiding the storm brewing inside me. "Don't worry, Claire. Tomorrow, everything will be different," she frowned, tilting her head. "What do you mean?" I gave her a small, cryptic smile. "You'll find out soon enough." Her smirk faltered for the first time. She narrowed her eyes, studying me. But then she scoffed and walked away. Little did she know, tomorrow wouldn't just be the day I left, it would be the day everything changed.
I never thought I'd live to see the day when my own blood would make me feel like a stranger in my own house. That night, after my daughter-in-law stormed out of my room, leaving me in silence, I sat there clutching my husband's photograph. "Robert," I whispered into the darkness. "What went wrong? Did I raise him wrong? Did I fail as a mother?" The weight of betrayal pressed against my chest, but deep inside, a part of me knew this wasn't just about respect. It was about money, property, control. 2 years ago, after Robert's passing, everything changed. My son Daniel became distant. He visited less and less, but whenever he did, his new wife, Melissa, was always by his side. Melissa had a smile that never reached her eyes. In the beginning, I tried to welcome her. I cooked her favorite meals, gifted her the pearls Robert had once bought me, even offered her advice on setting up her new home. But no matter what I did, she looked at me as though I was nothing more than an obstacle. I remember the first argument clearly. "Daniel," Melissa had said one evening, her voice sharp, "why does your mother still live in that big house? It's too much for her. Don't you think it would make sense for us to take it over?" My heart froze as I overheard them. Daniel stammered, "Melissa, it's her home. We can't just— We can if we convince her." She cut in. "She's old. She doesn't need it. And besides, you're her only son. It's your right." Right? My husband and I worked our entire lives for that house. It was where I raised Daniel, where every corner held a memory of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and even the quiet nights of Robert reading by the fireplace. And now, it was nothing more than a prize to Melissa. The following morning, I came into the kitchen to find Melissa on the phone, speaking in a hushed but hurried tone. "Yes, once the papers are signed, the house will be under our name. We'll finally have enough equity to expand the business," she said. I froze in the doorway. "Papers? Under their name?" She turned and saw me. For a moment her face darkened, but she quickly put on that fake sweet smile. "Oh, good morning, Aurora. Did you sleep well?" I forced a nod, but my heart pounded in my chest. Something bigger was at play. Later that night, I confronted Daniel. "Son," I began softly, "have you been thinking about selling the house?" His eyes darted away, and that was all the answer I needed. "Mom, listen," he started, his voice trembling. "Melissa and we've had financial struggles. Her business needs investment, and, well, we thought. You thought? I interrupted, anger breaking through my sadness. This is the house your father built with his bare hands. The home where I raised you. And now you want to throw me out like an unwanted guest? Daniel's face fell. For a brief moment, I saw the boy I once cradled, ashamed and helpless. But then Melissa appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. She's being dramatic again, Daniel. Don't let her guilt you. She'll be fine in a retirement home. Her words sliced through me like a knife. Retirement home. As if I was some burden they needed to discard. I spent that night wide awake, staring at the ceiling. They didn't know. They had no idea about the secret Robert and I kept. After his passing, I discovered documents he had carefully hidden away. Papers that held the true ownership of the property. Not just the house, but land, savings, and even shares in a company Melissa didn't know existed. He had protected me in ways even I hadn't realized. And now, I had the power to decide who truly controlled this family's future. Days turned into weeks. Melissa became bolder, treating me as though I was already gone. She redecorated parts of the house without asking, brought her friends over who looked at me with pity, and even rearranged Robert's study, my sanctuary. One afternoon, as I walked in, I heard her bragging to a friend. Just wait. Once the house is in our name, we'll refinance and finally get rid of these money problems. Daniel's mother doesn't even know what's coming. Her friend laughed, and something inside me snapped. That evening, I pulled Daniel aside. Son, I said, my voice shaking, do you even hear the way she talks about me? About your father's house? Daniel rubbed his temples. Mom, you don't understand. I'm stuck. Melissa's business is failing. We're drowning in debt. If we don't get this house, we lose everything. And what about me? I asked, tears brimming in my eyes. Am I just collateral damage? A problem you need to solve? He looked at me then, guilt flickering in his eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what else to do. I turned away, my heart breaking. My own son was willing to sacrifice me for money. One stormy evening, as rain lashed against the windows, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, I was shocked to see a man in a dark coat holding a briefcase. Mrs. Hughes? He asked politely. Yes? I represent your late husband's estate. There are matters we need to discuss privately. I let him in, my mind racing. Melissa and Daniel weren't home. This was my chance. He opened the briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Inside were legal documents that confirmed what I already suspected. The house, the land, the savings, all were secured in my name alone, with provisions Robert had set in place to protect me from exactly this kind of betrayal. Tears blurred my vision. Robert had known. He had seen the danger before I did, but the man wasn't finished. There's also something else, he said. Something I believe you're not yet aware of. I leaned forward, my breath caught in my throat. Before he could continue, the front door burst open. Melissa's voice rang out, sharp and furious. What's going on here? She demanded, her eyes narrowing as she saw the papers spread across the table. Daniel stood behind her, pale and silent. I quickly closed the folder, but Melissa's gaze was locked on it, suspicion flaring in her eyes. For the first time, I didn't look away. I met her stare with a calm, steady expression. Just some unfinished business, I said quietly. But inside, my heart was pounding. Because I knew, the moment she discovered the truth, everything would change. And I wasn't sure if my family would survive it. Melissa's eyes burned into me as she stormed into the living room, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. Daniel trailed behind her, his face pale as though he'd already seen the ending to a tragedy. "What are those papers?" she demanded, pointing at the folder still on the table. "What are you hiding from us, Aurora?" I kept my hand resting firmly on the folder, my heart steady for the first time in weeks. "They're mine," I said calmly, "and they're about my house. My life. My future." Melissa scoffed, her voice dripping with contempt. "Your house? You mean our house. Daniel is your only son. By right, it belongs to us." The lawyer sitting across from me cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence. "I'm afraid that isn't accurate, Mrs. Green." Melissa froze. "Excuse me? And who exactly are you?" "I represent the Hughes estate," he said smoothly. "Mr. Robert Hughes left behind legal documents that clearly state the property and all related assets are under Aurora's sole ownership. They cannot be transferred, sold, or claimed without her written consent." Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "What? Dad never told me?" Melissa spun on him, her face flushed with rage. "Did you know about this?" Daniel stuttered. "No, I swear, I didn't." I stood up slowly, my voice shaking not from fear but from a storm of emotions. "Of course you didn't know, Daniel. Because your father and I both saw what was happening. He saw it before I did. He knew the greed, the manipulation, and he made sure I would be protected." Melissa slammed her hands on the table. "This is ridiculous. That money, that house, it should be ours. We have debts. We have a business." "You mean your gambling debts?" I cut her off, my voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. The room went still. Daniel blinked. "Gambling? Melissa, what is she talking about?" Melissa's face went pale, then flushed again. "She's lying. Don't listen to her." But I didn't need to lie. Robert had left more than property papers. He'd left a trail of receipts, bank statements, and even private investigator notes. For months, he had quietly followed Melissa's activities. The casinos, the credit cards maxed out in his son's name, the business loans that never reached any business. I opened the folder and pulled out the documents, spreading them across the table like a dealer laying down cards in a high-stakes game. "These," I said firmly, "are the truths you've both ignored. Melissa, you've been siphoning money for over a year, and Daniel, you've been too blind, too weak to see it."
It wasn't a courtroom, but it felt like one. The lawyer sat like a judge, the papers my evidence, and the two people I once called family now looked like defendants. Daniel's voice broke as he read the statements. "Melissa, is this true?" Melissa snapped. "It's not what it looks like." He slammed his fist on the table. "Don't lie to me. All this time, you told me the money was for the salon, for expansion." "I did it for us," she shot back, her eyes blazing. "Do you think I want to live in your mother's shadow forever? This was supposed to be our house, our future, but she—" Melissa pointed at me with shaking hands. "She refuses to let go." I took a step forward, my voice calm, but cutting through her chaos. "This house isn't the problem, Melissa. The problem is your greed. The problem is how you poisoned my son against me, how you made him believe I was in the way." Daniel buried his face in his hands, torn between shame and fury. "God, what have I done?" Word travels fast in families. By the weekend, my nieces, cousins, and even my church friends knew something was wrong. When Daniel begged me to keep the matter private, I refused. "No," I said. "This ends in the open. You wanted to treat me like a burden in my own home? Then let everyone hear the truth." And so, at our cousin Emily's wedding reception, where the entire extended family gathered under chandeliers and clinking glasses, I stood up and asked for the microphone. My hands trembled at first, but when I looked at the sea of familiar faces, faces that had once admired our family unity, I felt a surge of strength. "I need to say something," I began, my voice echoing through the hall. "Something about betrayal, about family, and about secrets." Gasps spread across the room. Daniel and Melissa froze at their table. I told them everything. About the arguments, the threats, the schemes to send me away, about the secret papers Robert left behind, about the debts Melissa had buried them in. Melissa shot up from her chair, her voice shrill. "She's lying! She's twisting everything!" But I turned toward her, my eyes locked on hers. "If I'm lying, then prove me wrong." Because the documents are right here, I held up the folder, the papers that sealed her fate. The hall erupted in whispers, gasps, murmurs of disbelief. Daniel stood too, shaking. "Melissa, tell me it's not true. Tell me." But Melissa only glared at me, her mask of charm shattered. The lawyer, who had agreed to attend for my protection, stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "Everything Mrs. Hughes has said is backed by evidence, and if necessary, it can and will be presented in court." The hall went silent. Melissa's face twisted with fury. She turned to Daniel, her voice breaking. "You think she's the victim here?" "You don't know everything either." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Melissa's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Ask her about the other secret. Ask her what she's really hiding. Because this isn't just about money." My chest tightened. My hands gripped the microphone. "What are you talking about?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. Melissa's eyes locked on mine, a wicked satisfaction in them. "Tell him, Aurora. Tell him about the other will, the one you've kept hidden, the one that changes everything." The entire hall gasped. All eyes turned to me, and in that moment, my heart sank. Because I realized Melissa wasn't bluffing. She knew. Somehow, she knew. I swallowed hard, my secret burning inside me, knowing that the next words out of my mouth could destroy the family forever. The ballroom felt colder than ice. The chandeliers sparkled above us, but every eye in the room was locked on me, waiting for my answer. Melissa's smug face gleamed with satisfaction. "The other will," she repeated, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Tell them, Aurora. Tell them what you've been hiding from your son." Daniel's voice cracked. "Mom, what is she talking about?" My throat tightened. My hands shook as I gripped the microphone. I had dreaded this moment for years, hoping the truth would never surface. But Robert had always said, "Secrets rot families from the inside out." I took a deep breath. "Yes," I whispered, my voice trembling but steady enough to reach the crowd. "There is another will. And it changes everything." Gasps rippled across the hall. A woman in the front row muttered, "Another will!" Melissa's smile widened. She thought she'd won, but she didn't understand the whole truth. I straightened my back, my voice growing firmer. Before Robert passed, he prepared 2 documents. One was the official will, giving me full ownership of this house, the land, and the financial assets. That's the one you've all heard about tonight. But there was another, one I kept hidden. In it, Robert left instructions about Daniel's inheritance. All eyes shifted to my son. He looked at me with wide, desperate eyes. "In that will," I continued, "Robert wrote that Daniel would only inherit if he proved himself capable of protecting this family's legacy. If he allowed greed, manipulation, or betrayal to influence him, then his share would be revoked and redirected to a charity foundation in Robert's name." A collective gasp erupted. The room buzzed with whispers like a hive of bees. Daniel stumbled back, his face pale. "What? Mom, you never told me." I looked at him with tears in my eyes. "I wanted to protect you, Daniel. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd see through Melissa's games before it came to this. But now the entire family knows the truth." Melissa's face twisted with rage. "This is insane. You're all going to believe her. She's manipulating you. She made this up to keep control." But the lawyer stepped forward, holding up stamped documents. "I've reviewed both wills. They're real. They've been notarized and registered. Everything Mrs. Hughes just said is accurate." The hall fell silent. Melissa's mask shattered. She turned on Daniel, screaming, "This is your fault. You let her walk all over us. I sacrificed everything, and what do I get? Nothing. People around the tables gasped at her outburst. A few shook their heads. Someone whispered, "So shameless." Another muttered, "Greedy woman." Her voice rose higher. "You all think she's some saint? She's just an old woman clinging to power. Without that money, without that house, she's nothing." The words echoed through the ballroom like poison, and then silence. Every eye turned back to me. I stood tall, my tears finally drying. "No, Melissa," I said softly but firmly. "I am not nothing. I am Aurora Hughes, wife, mother, grandmother. This house, this life, this legacy, none of it is yours. You tried to steal it, to break it, but the truth is now exposed." The crowd erupted in applause. Some people even stood, their faces filled with admiration. Melissa's face crumbled. The lawyer cleared his throat again. "Mrs. Green, Melissa, given your actions and the evidence of your financial misconduct, legal proceedings will follow. Bank statements show unauthorized withdrawals and gambling transactions tied to Daniel's accounts. If pressed, these can and will be taken to court." Melissa's face drained of color. Daniel stared at her, betrayal etched on his face. You used me. You used us." She reached for his arm desperately. "Daniel, listen." He pulled away. "No, we're done, Melissa." The hall buzzed with gasps, whispers, murmurs. Melissa's hands shook. She looked around, realizing there was no ally left. "You'll regret this," she hissed before storming out, her heels clattering against the marble floor. The doors slammed shut behind her, leaving only stunned silence in her wake. I turned back to the crowd, suddenly exhausted. My voice cracked as I spoke. I never wanted this public spectacle, but sometimes, when lies grow too heavy, the only way to survive is to bring them into the light. The hall went silent. People nodded, some even wiping away tears. Daniel stepped toward me, his face streaked with shame. "Mom, I don't deserve forgiveness. I let her turn me against you. I raised my hand, stopping him. My heart ached. "You are still my son. But Robert's will, it leaves no room for weakness. If you want to earn back what he left for you, you must prove yourself. Not to me, to him, to your family, to yourself." Daniel bowed his head, unable to meet my eyes. The lawyer closed the folder, sealing it shut. "As of tonight, Mrs. Hughes remains the sole legal owner of all property and assets. Daniel, you will need to petition for review once you can demonstrate financial responsibility and independence. Until then, all access is restricted." A wave of whispers moved through the crowd again. Some clapped softly. Others stared at Daniel with pity. Later that night, as the hall emptied and laughter from the wedding guests returned to the dance floor, I stood by the window, staring out at the night sky. Robert's voice echoed in my mind. "Protect the legacy, Aurora, even if it breaks your heart." I thought it was over. But as I gathered my things, a young waiter slipped me a folded piece of paper. "Someone asked me to give this to you, ma'am," he said nervously before hurrying away. I unfolded it with trembling hands. "You think it's finished? But there are more secrets. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the old courthouse. Don't trust anyone, not even your son." My breath caught. My hands shook. Who sent this? What other secrets were left? And why did they warn me not to trust Daniel? The music of the wedding played on, but inside me, a new storm began to rise.
It has been 3 years since that night in the ballroom, the night my world shattered, and yet, strangely, began again. At first I thought exposing the truth would destroy me. Instead, it freed me. For the first time in decades, I was no longer living in the shadows of secrets or trying to protect people who had no intention of protecting me. The days that followed were stormy. My son, Daniel, moved into a small apartment after Melissa abandoned him. His pride was broken, his reputation bruised. He tried for a time to blame me, but as months passed, reality sank in. Melissa's manipulations had been her own, but his weakness had allowed them to grow. That realization was harder for him to face than losing his inheritance. We barely spoke for nearly a year, and when we finally did, his voice cracked with something I hadn't heard from him in years: humility. "Mom," he whispered one day, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm trying to be better. I want to be the son Dad would be proud of." I didn't answer right away. Tears filled my eyes because I knew that brokenness was sometimes the only soil where growth could take root. Instead of drowning in pain, I turned it into purpose. With the help of my old neighbor Joseph and my ever-loyal advisor Carlos, I founded a small organization, the Hughes Foundation for Senior Dignity. At first, it was just me and Joseph sitting at my dining table, drinking tea, scribbling down ideas. But word spread quickly. Seniors from all over the community began reaching out, men and women who had been manipulated, silenced, or robbed by their own families. Their stories mirrored mine: children demanding property, nieces pressuring for money, sons-in-law taking advantage of trust. Each story carried the same scar: betrayal. And for each story, we offered not just legal guidance, but something even more important: a voice, a place where their pain wasn't dismissed as old age paranoia. Today, the foundation has grown beyond anything I could have imagined. We've helped over 300 seniors reclaim their homes, rebuild their finances, and most importantly, rediscover their dignity. But through all of this, the biggest lesson I've learned isn't about money, property, or even betrayal. It's about boundaries. For years, I thought love meant giving endlessly. I thought motherhood meant sacrificing until there was nothing left of me. But I was wrong. Love without boundaries is not love. It is self-destruction. Forgiveness without accountability is not forgiveness. It is permission. And family without respect is not family. It is bondage. When I finally understood that, I realized why Robert's second will was written the way it was. He wasn't punishing Daniel. He was testing him. Testing if he would value love over greed, respect over convenience. Daniel failed that test, but life has a way of giving us retakes if we're willing to do the work. Over time, Daniel began showing small changes. He found a steady job, something Melissa had always sneered at. He sold the flashy car he couldn't afford and bought a second-hand one. He began paying his debts, slowly, painfully, but with his own money. The man who once looked at me as if I were a burden now comes every Sunday to share a simple meal. Sometimes he still struggles to meet my eyes, but when he does, I see glimpses of the boy I once knew. Will I ever trust him completely again? I don't know. Trust, once broken, doesn't return easily. But I've learned not to measure love by blind trust. It must be measured by consistent action. And Daniel is learning that too. The grandson I never knew. There is one wound that still aches deeply: my grandson, Oliver. He is nearly 3 now. Melissa took him away when she left, and for a long time I feared I'd never see him again. But last Christmas, something changed. Daniel showed up at my door, holding Oliver in his arms. "Mom," he whispered, tears streaming down his face, "meet your grandson." I held that child for the first time, and in his tiny laughter I felt something heal inside me. Oliver didn't know the history, the lies, the betrayal. All he knew was the warmth of arms that loved him. And I silently prayed that my mistakes with Daniel would not be repeated with him. These days, my life is full, not of wealth, but of purpose. I spend 3 days a week at the foundation, 2 days teaching gardening workshops to local seniors, and evenings writing letters to the many people who reach out after reading my story. My first book became a bestseller, and I'm now working on a second one, not about betrayal, but about healing. The apartment that Melissa once mocked is now filled with laughter, with the voices of women who come together to share their stories, to drink tea, to remind each other that aging is not a curse, it is a crown. And though I lost many illusions, I gained something more precious: peace. If you've listened this far, I want you to take one lesson with you. Family is not defined by blood alone. Family is anyone who treats you with respect, love, and kindness. And just as importantly, you are not selfish for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not unloving for saying no. If I could go back to that night when Melissa slapped me, when Daniel stood silent, I would whisper one thing to my past self: do not break yourself trying to fix others. Your dignity matters. Your peace matters. You matter. As I finish writing this reflection, Oliver's laughter drifts in from the garden where Daniel is playing with him. Joseph is inside preparing tea, and Carlos is on his way for our monthly meeting. Life is not perfect. Some wounds remain, but I am not broken. I am living proof that sometimes losing what you thought was family can lead you to finding your true one. So now, dear listener, I turn the question to you. Have you ever had to set painful boundaries with someone you loved? What did it teach you about yourself? Tell me in the comments. I will be reading each one with love and respect. And if my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe so you and I can keep walking this path of truth, courage, and healing together. With love, Aurora Hughes. It has been 3 years since that painful night. The night Melissa humiliated me. The night Daniel betrayed me. The night I thought my life was over. But strangely, that night was also my beginning. At first, the silence in my home was unbearable. My son moved out, Melissa disappeared, and for months I sat in the echo of broken trust. But instead of drowning in grief, I chose something else. I chose purpose. With Joseph and Carlos by my side, we started a small group to help seniors like me who had been manipulated or abandoned by their families. Today, that small group has grown into the Hughes Foundation for Senior Dignity, supporting hundreds of elderly men and women. Every story I hear reminds me I was not alone. Sons demanding property, daughters-in-law threatening to withhold grandchildren. It's a cruel pattern. But each time we help someone reclaim their home or savings, I feel stronger. I turned my pain into power. Daniel's journey has been harder. For a long time he blamed me, but slowly life humbled him. Melissa left, debts piled up, and he finally began to change. The proud, arrogant man who once looked at me with contempt now comes every Sunday for dinner. We don't talk about the past much, but when I see him wash the dishes or laugh with Joseph, I know he is trying. Trust may take years, but healing has begun. And then, Oliver, my grandson. The first time I held him 2 Christmases ago, I thought my heart would burst. He knew nothing of betrayal or greed. All he knew was love. That tiny child became the symbol of my second chance. I pray every day that he grows up learning respect, kindness, and courage, the values I once lost sight of in my own family. My apartment, once filled with arguments and fear, is now a place of peace. Seniors gather here to drink tea, share stories, and remind each other that age is not weakness, it is wisdom. The walls are lined with thank you letters and photographs, proof that dignity can be reclaimed. And so, dear listener, here is what my journey has taught me. Family is not always blood. Family is anyone who respects you. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are survival. And the greatest act of love you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from those who refuse to value you. If I could speak to my past self, the one who stood frozen when Melissa slapped me, I would whisper, "You matter. Your dignity matters." Don't forget that. Now I ask you, have you ever had to set painful boundaries with someone you loved? Share your story in the comments. Let's heal together. With love, Aurora Hughes.